Hello, and welcome to Badger Talk Quick Picks, which brings exciting happenings, resources, and talent from your UW flagship campus to the people of Wisconsin and beyond. I'm India Blue-Niehoff. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm currently getting my master's in library and information studies at UW-Madison's iSchool. I'm honored to announce Anne Moser, who will be speaking on breaking down the problem of plastics in our Great Lakes. She'll unravel sources of their pollution, barriers to cleaning it up, and innovative solutions to restore a healthy lake ecosystem. Anne Moser has served as Senior Special Librarian and Education Coordinator for Wisconsin Sea Grant since 2008. Where she manages print and digital collections of the Wisconsin Water Library, brings Great Lakes literacy to young learners, and organizes professional learning experiences for formal and non-formal educators. She's led several projects in support of Wisconsin Sea Grant's goal of intersecting the arts, sciences, and humanities, all in the goal of achieving a science-informed society. She has a BA in Spanish and art history, as well as a master's in library and information studies. Please welcome Anne Moser.
Thank you so much, India. Yes, as India said, I work for Wisconsin Sea Grant at UW-Madison. Sea Grant is a federal and state partnership that is working on all the issues facing the Great Lakes today. And we do this through research, outreach, and education. So one of the pressing issues facing the Great Lakes is plastic. It really is indeed a tiny debris with great impacts. So this talk is focused on plastic pollution. In the Sea Grant world, we often also use the term marine debris. So I'll probably be using those terms interchangeably in my talk. All right, so in order to tackle such a big topic in a short amount of time, what we're going to do is explore its past, present, and future. We do really need to understand how it is that we got here. How is it that this material is so ubiquitous in our daily lives? And then we really should consider what happens when all of this material becomes waste. What are the impacts we see today because of all that waste, and how does it affect the Great Lakes? And when we consider these impacts, we really need to think about what we want to do differently. What changes can we make to protect our watershed? All right, so I thought we could start here. This is an image from the film The Graduate. You can see McGuire is advising a very young, impressionable Ben about a great opportunity for his future. And one word, plastics. I think it's very interesting that McGuire is sort of foreshadowing where we are today, almost 60 years ago. But actually, plastic was invented decades earlier. In 1907, a man named Leo Baekeland, he coined the term plastic when he created a fully synthetic product that he called Bakelite. But it really wasn't until the 50s that plastic became so common in our daily living. This was the time when women were starting to enter the workforce. And that meant that suddenly everyone was kind of scrambling and looking around and trying to figure out how would they manage the household now? What were the daily tasks? Who was going to do the daily tasks of cleaning and cooking and laundry and all the rest? So one solution emerged, throwaway living, the idea that disposable items were going to just transform everything. So in this article from Life magazine in 1955, you can see like a very happy family, ta-da! They're just tossing everything out, throwing it in the trash, and using disposable items like paper plates and paper towels. Life was going to be great and easy. The article even mentioned some kind of absurd ideas, throwaway draperies and dog bowls. And this throwaway society was also leading to the rise in the use of plastic every day in all kinds of applications in our lives. Milk was no longer being delivered in glass bottles. Instead, you would go to the grocery store and purchase a big gallon of milk in a big plastic jug. So you can really see this in the rise in the production of plastics. Beginning in the 1950s, you can really see an explosive increase in the amount produced around the world. You can see down at the bottom, the lightest blue That is plastic used in packaging. So a large portion of that production goes toward packaging. And what that translates into and what it illustrates so well is that plastic's in everything. When I was putting these slides together, I just kind of threw some ideas out there, things you probably are not surprised to see: water bottles and plastic bags. If you've ever had children in your life, tons and tons of toys are plastic, sporting equipment, that that glitter that drives parents crazy. You see a lot of medical uses of plastic. And I'm staring at you through a computer made of plastic and my plastic glasses. So in fact, it is in every part of our lives. So when we look at all these products and materials, we really do need to think about what happens when all of this becomes waste. When we're not using this anymore, where does this waste go? Well, we know pretty well that it heads off into our oceans. You may have heard of garbage patches, these huge piles of trash out in the ocean systems. These piles of trash are parts of the gyres that are in the ocean. Gyres are good things, they're natural things. They're these very large systems of circulating currents. They circulate the ocean waters around the globe. But the gyres also draw in pollution that we release from our coastal areas. And it really does create what looks like an island of trash. But we live in a very, very different part of the world. We are adjacent to the greatest watershed, the greatest freshwater system in the world. The Great Lakes contains a little bit more than 20% of the world's fresh, unfrozen surface water. It provides drinking water to about 30 million people in the US and Canada, and it's incredibly important to our economy. It provides about $8.8 billion in wages. So the health of this watershed is incredibly important to Wisconsin and all of the states and provinces and tribal nations that call it home. But this freshwater system is incredibly different than the ocean, especially when we consider topics like what we're talking about today, plastic pollution. So scientists define 5 ways that this is different, how this marine debris is different. First of all, we're talking about fresh water. We know that from growing up. The Great Lakes are made of fresh water, not salt water. So salt water is denser. It doesn't freeze. And that affects how this waste, this plastic, moves in the water and how much and how quickly that it breaks down. It also, as I said before, it's found in drinking water. And you think about 30 million people draw their drinking water directly from the Great Lakes. And third, this is very important. The waste in the Great Lakes is absolutely tiny. They call it microplastics, and that is defined as less than 5 millimeters in length. So about the size of the top of an eraser, so really small. And to me, when I think about that size of a microplastic, I think, is this pollutant out of sight, out of mind? And the way the water moves. Another important difference is how plastic reaches our watershed. In the world's oceans, all this trash and debris can wash up from very, very far away places, from the Great Lakes, for example. And that's due to those global currents that I mentioned. But in the Great Lakes, plastic pollution does not come from an anonymous source far, far away. But in fact, marine debris flows out from our shorelines because we leave it there. And then finally, and this is incredibly important as well, we know so much less about marine debris in the Great Lakes than we do about our oceans. So what's the problem with plastic pollution? Well, first, it accumulates. So when it accumulates, we see shorelines like we see on the left, littered with garbage. You can tell that it's mostly plastic waste. And on the photo on the right, you can see that this accumulation of plastic can lead to entanglement with our wildlife, birds and animals. And this can lead to injury and even death. So accumulation like this really does degrade the quality of life of our coastal communities. It's very unsightly. It can lower property values, and it is really, really expensive, very costly to clean up. Second, wildlife ingest it. When an animal swallows debris, it blocks their stomach. It can puncture the inside of their bodies with its sharp edges and even create a false sense of being full. This can make an animal ill and also cause it to starve. And if we take the next step and we think about all of the Wisconsinites and others that draw their drinking water from the Great Lakes, are they ingesting plastic as well? And third, plastic degrades. So this is a very interesting area that we don't know a lot about. We're beginning to learn. This is where a lot of the investment and research is going on. We do know that plastic, it is a petroleum product, and as it decomposes, it goes through changes, biological changes, chemical, physical changes, all due to the exposure to sunlight, oxidation, and many other factors. But we do not yet know that full story of how this affects the health of both wildlife and humans. In the Great Lakes, there's an additional problem. We are really concerned about how decomposition affects the microbiome, the tiny microorganisms that are important to our food web. And again, this is an area focus of research and an area there is a lot to still learn. We have an idea of where some of the plastic pollution comes from. Put some of the examples up here. Littering somehow is still a big problem. A lot of the common items that we think of with plastic are listed there. I've also included cigarette butts, which is another big source of plastic pollution in the Great Lakes. So vessels traveling on the Great Lakes sometimes leave debris. For example, a fishing vessel, they may leave behind a net. It might get unmoored from its place where they're fishing, and this is called a ghost net, and that is a source of marine debris. Road runoff entering the Great Lakes, that includes tire dust, another source of marine debris. When we launder our clothing, either at home or in large textile facilities, microfibers can enter the waste stream. So we love our fleece jackets and our polyester clothing, we wash it, and tiny little fibers come off of our clothing. And they just run through our machines, through the wastewater treatment plant, and directly out into the Great Lakes. And in fact, each piece of clothing that you wash, your fleece jacket, for example, emits about 2,000 fibers directly into the Great Lakes. And there are inadvertent discharges from manufacturing of plastics. What we do know from this list, from these sources, from the quantity of plastic pollution there is, it's not sustainable. This amount of waste is not sustainable, and something needs to be done. So there are current searches for solutions in research and innovation. This is an ongoing area. There are some successes in legislation, and there's a lot we can do on a personal level, and I'll talk about that. So under research, we're really, as I said, we don't know a lot about marine debris in the Great Lakes. So right now, we are conducting basic research to understand the concentrations, the types of plastic, the sources, to know more about them. They're also looking a lot at the health effects of plastic pollution, both to humans and wildlife. And a lot of research is going into how plastic interacts with the microbial life, those small microorganisms that are so important to the food web. In terms of innovation, a lot is happening, looking at options for recycling, how to change processes at the wastewater treatment plant to deal with this waste. And then there's some research on new formulas for manufacturing. Perhaps there's a new way to manufacture plastic that's more sustainable. And there have been some really great legislative solutions. Some communities and states and nations have placed bans on plastic bags or charge large fees. That's another way to limit the use of plastic bags. Some communities have instituted limits on single-use plastics. So one example is the Park Service no longer allows straws in national parks. BPA is now limited from infant bottles. So the health effects of that were identified. So legislation was passed to ban that. And an act was passed in 2015, the Microbead Free Waters Act. And microbeads, they're kind of little spherical shapes. You wash your face with some product that contains little beads, little scrubbing action that will wash off and go down your sink and right out into our water bodies. So those are some successes that we've had. And then finally, there's a lot that we can do, what we can do in our lives. We can take a look at our plastic footprint. Now, before we talk about that, I do want to say one thing. Not all plastic is bad. And in fact, there's some really excellent uses of plastic. And I have to begin with the medical field. The use of plastic has led to so many better health outcomes. There's a lot of examples: prosthetics, stents, IV bags. So definitely a great use of plastic. We're not going to go back to the old days of that. Decking is another example. Plastic composite decking needs way less care. It's very durable. It means it doesn't need to be replaced as often. And you can even purchase decking that is made of recycled plastic, even better. And then the use of plastic in vehicles makes them more fuel efficient, and that leads to less use of petroleum products. And in the upper Midwest, it has that added bonus of adding some corrosion resistance. But there are many examples where plastic use is not very logical. Plastic straws, of course, if they are medically necessary, of course, that's a different issue. But generally, straws are a one-use item that can easily be eliminated. The K-cup, the inventor of the K-cup, John Sylvan, has said he regrets inventing them because of the quantity of waste that they generate. One study, I think in 2014, showed there was enough K-cups being disposed in landfills to wrap around the world 12 times. Now, there is an alternative now. You can buy little refillable K-cups, so that was a really great addition to the K-cup. The center picture of the banana, which comes in a natural packaging, wrapped in plastic on a plastic tray. I think that's kind of interesting when you think of produce and you think of the plastic that we now see in the produce aisle. Now, there is some research that shows plastic can improve shelf life. So what it's important for us to understand is our thinking about our purchasing and what we're buying, and thinking about that plastic that might be around a piece of produce that you buy. I had to include bads, of course. Here's a statistic to consider: 5 trillion. The world uses about 5 trillion plastic bags per year. Each of us Americans, we use an average of 365 bags per year. I think that we could do better, including myself. Those habits need to continue to form, right? And then the plastic water bottle. Of course, if there are issues with the community's drinking water, it's essential we have options. But water utilities are very regulated and required to test and publish those test results for community members. So in this case, it's really important to be informed about your own water supply. And in general, the water supplies of the US are good. And here's just a note of caution about bottled water. It's not necessarily better. In fact, the regulations don't adequately assure that consumers that these water bottles are safe and pure. In fact, I think there was a recent study where PFAS, another contaminant found in the Great Lakes and other places, was recently found in bottled water. So that's another case of buyer beware, understand what you're purchasing. I really love this quote because when I think of the choices I make in terms of plastics, it kind of guides me. It's pretty amazing that our society has reached a point where the effort necessary to extract oil from the ground, ship it to the refinery, turn it into plastic, shape it, truck it, buy it, and bring it home is considered less effort than what it takes to wash it and put it away when you're done. So finally, Sea Grant has some ideas to share. We came up with the 8 R's. They're some good ideas to think about: rethinking, refusing, reducing, reusing. We've been kind of talking about that as you make choices, really rethinking what you're doing, reusing everything. I really like 5 and 6, refurbishing and repairing. This is a place where I don't have a lot of skills. So I'm working on it. Instead of, buying a new shirt when the button falls off, repair your shirt or repair the microwave. So that's something that I'm working on for sure. I really like 7 too, repurpose and be creative, because this is a place that I think there's a lot of potential. One example, my friend has type 1 diabetes. She was looking for containers for sharps. And so she said, "Do you have any laundry containers, laundry jugs?" And I said, "Yes." And they're approved to collect sharps. So yay, I finished in the laundry and I can give her that container. And then finally, recycling is definitely the last option. Right now, the recycling industry is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not recycling our plastic waste. So really consider that your last option. Finally, you can take these principles and apply them to protect our lakes. A lot of the same themes are here: reuse, refuse, etc. Drink tap water from your reusable bottle, stow it carefully, put the can on the trash can tightly so things don't fly out. I love the butt in and butt out. Butt in, you can teach people about the impacts that you've learned. Butt out, you can use an ashtray because cigarette butts do bring a lot of plastics to the Great Lakes. And I've done this talk many times, and the biggest piece of advice I always share is if you have a fleece jacket, wash it a quarter of the time, and you're saving a lot of fibers from going into the Great Lakes. Finally, Sea Grant, we have a lot of resources about the Great Lakes and about marine debris, so please check it out. And I am a librarian, so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Please reach out or tell me about some of your great ideas for reducing your own plastic footprint. Thanks.